Lots of kit plan today with my new kickboard. What should we call it? I'm going to talk about how I have knocked off 12 to 13 minutes off my Ironman swim in the last 4 to 5 years. To be completely clear, this is a video about how I've improved and what I've done over those years to improve, and what I do believe most people need to do, either some of them or all of the 5 pointers to improve their swimming. But it's not the secret. There is no secret, unfortunately. Otherwise, there'd be some very rich people in the triathlon coaching world. So my 5 tips slash things I've done. The first one is having one-to-one coached sessions regularly. By that, I mean maybe every 2 to 3 months. If you can find a reliable coach that you can get in a lane and they watch you, they can pull up some pointers, show you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and hopefully give you some drills that are specific to you for things for you to work on to go forward. I have done it a few times with Tim George when I lived in London. It was like 30 quid, half an hour in the pool, and they give you some really, or he gave me some really good pointers. Could also go to an endless pool. So I have recently been to see Stuart at SwimCube and spent an hour and a half with him there, looking at my overall stroke and picking out a few key things to work on, either with drills or focusing on them in some aerobic sets back in the pool. The 2 key things that we've identified to look at is adding a bit more rotation to help me with my breathing and breathing to my right rather than my left a bit more. And the second is trying to work on that elusive catch and having a much higher elbow. I thoroughly recommend Stuart, and I'm 100% going to go back in a few months and hopefully show off the improvements I've made and find a few more things to work on to continue to progress my swimming. Okay, tip number 2 is swim at least 4 times a week. I think far too many people expect to improve by swimming 2 times a week. Over the winter period in particular, I believe that's the time where you could drop either a run or a bike session out of your training program and add in another swim. This will not only improve your swimming, but also it should maximize your sort of aerobic capacity that you'll gain from swimming, which can translate to your bike and run, and also may limit or minimize the risk of injury that cycling, and in particular running, may give to you. Over those 4 swims, maybe more, ideally you're swimming at least 3k, so you're actually doing proper swim sets. It's good to build up maybe 4 times 2k a week and then slowly ramp it up. By no means jump in the pool and do 12k week 1 if you're not used to it. But once you're able to swim 3 to 4k a session, 4 to 5 to 6 times a week maybe, you'll really notice the difference. Yes, there'll be some swims you're tired. Yes, there'll be some swims that don't feel great. In fact, if only 1 swim a week feels good, you're probably doing something right. Not every swim will feel amazing, but as soon as you gain that consistency, you really start to see some gains. Number 3 is swimming with a group. Now, swimming with other people, like biking and running, exercising or training with people that are better than you, normally improves your ability or gives you an insight into what it takes to improve. I swam with a group, Clapham Chasers, when I lived in London on a Wednesday and a Friday. Really good because it was not just a fitness-based session. It was predominantly technique-based, particularly throughout the winter. And there were some race effort-based swims in the season. But predominantly it was drill-based, aerobic swimming, practicing your pacing in a group. You can all do threshold hard swims on your own in the pool yourself. I would much rather spend time doing technique drilled and sort of skill-based group swimming rather than thrashing yourself, tempo, threshold, whatever you call it, throughout the year. But if you could swim with the group once a week, so one of those 4 swims as a group would be great. Number 4 is to swim test regularly, particularly throughout the off season, as hopefully your fitness improves. This is your classic 400, 200 meter test, a 1K time trial, a 1.5K time trial. If you're really brave, a 3K time trial, but you should really be measuring your improvement. Hopefully every 4 weeks. If you did a swim test, it doesn't have to be the same one every time, but something to measure your progress. You can do tests on your stroke efficiency, swolf tests, etc., but measuring it in a consistent way throughout the season to monitor and track improvement. The other big thing from doing these tests is, just like biking and running where you have zones for power, heart rate, pace, it should be exactly the same for swimming. You should really have a clear, distinguishable difference between easy swimming, aerobic swimming, tempo swimming, threshold, VO2, whatever your coach or you call your zones. You should really see a clear difference. On the screen now should be an example of my zones. Now these are my zones when I was super duper fit in August, September this year, where you can see what my sort of threshold pace was. This is something that I could maintain over a long set, like 20 hundreds, or in some cases 30 hundreds. You can see how easy my easy swimming is compared to that. It should be significant. It should be just like running, where slow running is 45 seconds to a minute slower than your tempo running, as an example. People that swim close to their threshold or aerobic effort all the time do not see improvement. You either need to slow down or speed up. And the last one is to understand what the goal is for swimming. Now on the screen should be a really useful graph that Tim George, who runs Endurance Workshop, who was my original coach, used to show me. And it quite clearly shows over distance what the drop off will be when you're fit for when you're timing yourself or racing yourself. And ideally, or what the goal of the season is to get as fast as possible in the off season, over 100 meters, 200 meters, whatever it is. And then throughout the spring and into race season, you want to raise your ability to swim just a bit slower than that for whatever your race distance is. This graph goes up to, I think, 1600 meters. So you're looking at like Olympic distance. But when you're super duper fit, there really isn't much difference between how fast you can swim 1500 meters to how fast you can swim 3K or 3.8K, whatever it is. If you've done the correct training, you see the exact same in running. You see people that are really quick over a really short distance, and then their marathon pace is not that dissimilar to their like tempo or whatever. And that's what they've done over the season. It doesn't happen overnight. It's over a consistent block, 20 weeks, 6 months, but they get really fast, and then they work on raising their threshold as high as they can or close as they can to that bit. So that should be everybody's goal, is get really quick, either through fitness, technique, or all of them, and then trying to sustain that effort for as long as possible by doing applicable sets. So swimming at that speed, racing at that speed, etc., and getting fit enough to do that.